So, hi everybody. I welcome you all to another session of With Purpose. We are excited to have Paula Bowie with us, who brings a wealth of experience and knowledge from her impressive career. Currently, the CEO of DYP Consulting, Paula is the strategy transformation executive and a strong leader who knows how to make a real difference in business. She's worked with organizations like JP Morgan, BMO, EY, and she has brought a lot of valuable insights through her expertise and in her role. So that was just a brief introduction from my end, Paula. Maybe having said that, if you would like to introduce yourself a bit more, so you can go ahead with that.
Thank you, Shruti, and thank you so much for inviting me to join everybody and the With Purpose group today. I really appreciate it. Yes, I've got a deep career in financial services and professional services, primarily focused around COO type functions, which weigh fairly heavily towards some of that finance and workforce management. And I'm delighted and actually honored to be able to share some of my journey with you today, and hope it's helpful for our attendees today.
Great, thanks for that, Paula. Guys, just putting it out there, if you have any questions, feel free to ping them in the chat box that you see over there. We'll be taking them up towards the end of the session. Okay. All right. So Paula, my first question to you would be, what exactly does empowering women in tech truly mean to you? And how have you witnessed its evolution throughout your career?
Great question to start off, Shruti. When I think about empowerment and the basics of great empowerment, I actually think of them as being gender independent, or demographic independent. As a leader who's trying to empower their team, I think it's my job to set a really clear direction, paint the picture of that vision, give people some really clear boundaries that they can operate within, where they don't have to come back to either myself or other people, that they can work within those boundaries, support them with the means to track progress, and be there as a coach and a support when needed. And in that role, you can give kind of clear, constructive feedback, as unambiguous as possible. And another thing that I think is really important about empowerment is letting your team know that whatever problems or challenges you might be addressing, that you always have their back. I think of it a little bit like, if something goes a little wrong, we'll deal with it inside the family, but outside of the family, that I've always got their back, so that they're confident in that empowerment. I think what I've seen through my career is, earlier on in my career, it seemed that there were far fewer women in positions where that empowerment was granted, whether that was a budgetary responsibility or a delivery responsibility. And that's definitely changed through the course of my career. But equally, I think there's still some of that statistical stereotype, I'm going to say, where I have seen some of the female members of my team in the past be a little more risk averse, a little less willing to take on the responsibility of that empowerment. And so for me, one of the things that I really am keen to do is say, how can we continue that progress? How can we continue that change and give everybody a feeling of greater empowerment? And we are talking about with purpose here today, women in technology, but I do think that some of that also applies to anyone who might find themselves in a community and feel that they're underrepresented, that they maybe can't see anybody who looks or feels quite like them.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you, Paula. That was a great answer, first of all. And so you also mentioned about indirect representation. So that sort of makes me think that women in tech, or women basically in general, wherever the other verticals, other genres of working, or whatever the occupation may be, there is something that there is this need of demanding empowerment, right? Like women need to demand empowerment. So if you could share any scenario where you had to demand that something, that empowerment, something for your team, and it turned out to be an unexpected negotiation, something like that.
Right. So I think for me, certainly bringing back a memory of working alongside a close colleague in technology, a male colleague, and we were working on a project alongside each other. And I think I was in a position where I wasn't sort of saying, I can take this. I can take the responsibility for this from beginning to end. Just tell me what parameters I'm working within. And we were on a meeting together, and he was kind enough to sort of take me aside at the end of the meeting. We went and grabbed a coffee, and he said, like, he was telling me, don't give away your power. Don't give away your power to somebody else. Just be really clear that, if we can just agree the parameters you're working within, yes, you'll take responsibility for this. Yes, you'll report back on this basis to make sure everybody's comfortable that you're on track. And, just go with it. And, it was a little nerve-wracking the first time I did it, but Chris was very supportive, and he was there as background, a bit like the coach that I hope to be. If I had a bit of a wobble, I could say, oh, Chris, like, this has happened, what do I do in this situation? And he was really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I too feel that, somebody having your back, a particular leader or a person you may look up to, it can be not exactly a leader. Leadership is a quality, right? So it can come from a colleague as well. When
Yes.
people tell you that they have your backs and they're there to support you and they guide you through that particular journey, and they tell you that this is where you can improve or you can do something like this, and they help you with that, that is actually very inspiring. I get inspired through that a lot. It boosts my confidence so much, and I am also very grateful to have such leaders with me, working with me. And I mean, I can, while you were reciting your example, I could think of a few examples that I have worked with, a few of the people, and irrespective of the gender, like they've been there and they've supported like that. So which brings me back to this question, Paula. As a leader, what specific actions do you ensure, like do you take to ensure that women in your teams feel empowered and supported in their roles?
Right.
So yeah.
So I think I start with those basics that we talked about. Are the basics in place? And then what I found with in the past with some of my female team members, who again I would say perhaps do tend to be a little more risk averse, have a different risk profile, is really make sure that we've got very regular checkpoints together, where on a one-to-one basis we can go through, and it's not a reporting out meeting, it's more a coaching meeting. And like, how is this going? How do you want to handle that? What are you seeing? So that we can kind of work alongside each other. And I've seen it be building confidence. What I've noticed, and I can picture a couple of incredibly promising younger women that I've worked with, really, really bright. It was about helping them build their confidence in themselves. I would say 99 times out of 100, when we sat down for that coaching meeting, they really knew exactly what they needed to do. They also knew exactly what they wanted to do. And I was trying to give them the framework to talk it through and first of all clarify and then give them the confidence to move forward. But again, I'd say yes, I think I have seen some of my female team members be a little more risk averse, but I try to give that coaching across the team, no matter what, depending on what each person's needs are.
I mean, that were some really great key actions, I think, Paula, that you just mentioned. Setting a clear direction and providing support are really crucial for fostering, an empowered environment is what I feel. And, so on empowerment, you mentioned that empowering women in tech is similar to empowering your entire team, basically. So do you think it's time to start using the word empowerment as a buzzword at cocktail parties? Or do you think it just dilutes the whole impact, the whole purpose?
So, Shruti, when I hear that, you saw my body language. I do have some mixed feelings. I think in the professional world, we sometimes, pick up on buzzwords, and maybe those words get overused sometimes or too frequently used. So I think empowerment to me is really important, because by being given some true autonomy over your working life, that builds engagement. Because if you feel that you have some control and some autonomy, then it's so much easier to feel engaged and kind of bought into the end result. But there are also a lot of people who use the words empowerment, but their actions don't match for me anyway, the definition of empowerment. So what I'd say is look out for the actions as much as you look out for the words, because there may be leaders and colleagues out there who, again, are empowering you, but they're not maybe using those words, but all of the actions add up to empowering you and setting you up for success.
Amazing. I I resonate with what you said. There are a lot more other, important words that I feel have been used quite so often that they've sort of lost their meaning altogether, or the meaning has been just transformed to something else, molded the meaning, the whole purpose has been molded into something else altogether. So, great
Yes.
answer, Paula. Yeah. So, I was just thinking, Paula, maybe if you can share any defining moment in your career where you realize the transformative power of the diversity and inclusion in leadership, particularly within the tech landscape, basically.
Shruti, definitely. And I will tell you what comes to mind immediately is something that happened to me a little while ago. At that point, I was still working with JP Morgan, and we had merged with another organization, a pretty big merger that we'd done. And all of a sudden, the business area that I was working in, and it was in technology and operations, the leadership team was transformed. It went from a majority of male leaders to a majority of female leaders. So our business head was female, our CFO was female, our head of tech and ops was female. I was reporting to the head of tech and ops as a female. The head of our financial planning and analysis, reporting to the CFO, was female. And we found ourselves in a meeting, a standard budget meeting with Jamie Dimon, and he was the only male in the room.
Yeah.
and everybody else was female. And that was just unbelievable. It was like, oh my goodness. It was really impactful to me to see that difference in representation, and to be able to see how all those other really senior women, the majority more senior than me, how they operated in that space. And it was just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine. I haven't been in such a scenario or a situation myself, but I can imagine if I am amongst, like, I am in a room with people where the majority of them are women. I don't know why I would feel a certain level of joy, and I would find that comfort, which, usually there is something that usually you connect to the female leaders, and you I feel they sort of empathize with you, you empathize with them, you somehow in some aspect or some on some level or some path of your journey, you must have figured out a certain way, or you must have felt a certain way, which quite resonates with you all. So that is quite impressive, Paul. I'm also looking forward to that day where I would actually have that room to myself, and with people, of course, where the majority are women. And you also mentioned, Paula, the lack of female role models early in your career. So,
Mm-hmm.
this is just a fun question. If you could choose a fictional character as a role model to inspire women in tech, so who would it be and why?
So had to think about this a little bit, but if I think about a fictional character from one of the TV series that I like, Grey's Anatomy,
Hmm.
I picked Christina Yang. And this may not mean anything if you've never watched Grey's Anatomy, but why did I pick that character? Um, the character as written has an absolutely fearless belief in her talent. The character is written, um, knows deep inside herself that she is one of the best, if not the best, in her field. And to feel that confidence, that certainty, must be amazing, right? And then the other thing in the way that the character was written, which I found, even though it was a drama, was sometimes laugh out loud, is that she had the confidence to say exactly what she thought without fear of what other people thought of her. Now, I'm not saying that we should all go around in the workplace doing that. I think there is a place for tact and diplomacy as well. But again, just imagining that you had the confidence to do that, I just loved it. And I think, as I think about the technology and operations forums I've been in, it's really about having that confidence. If your point of view is a little different to everybody else in the room, having that confidence to say, yeah, I hear you all, but I'd like to present a different point of view. I want to bring a different perspective here, because to me that's where the value of a diverse team comes together. Like, if everybody went to the same university, if everybody learned the same way, and you're faced with a problem, there's a high percentage that everybody will work through that problem in the same way and come to maybe the same conclusion. Or if they're struggling to solve the problem, all struggle to solve the problem. To me, it's about how do we bring together groups of people who think differently about things, have different life experiences, different professional experiences, come at solving that problem differently. If everybody has the confidence to share, and also I'd say has the confidence to not speak and listen, then you really get to a better solution. And so that's why in this, sort of fictional characters the way she was written, that confidence and certainty, I found kind of inspiring.
Oh, great choice, Paula. I mean, that character is for sure fearless. And I mean, all the qualities that you just spoke about that I like one should aspire, especially if you're a woman in tech, you must aspire to have them. And yes, I would say we should go for it. I mean, of course, you are right. We are in a setup, we are in IT, we have to take care of certain things. But apart from that, having that clarity, having that fearlessness, being that straightforward and being that honest, I feel that's quite important. So kudos, great choice, great answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Paula, I also learned that you're a neuroscience coach. So,
Yeah.
uh, my apologies, I am not so familiar with the term. I would actually want you to explain it to us, maybe to me, for starters, what exactly does being a neuroscience coach mean? How is it like? I have heard of therapists, clinical psychologists, and everybody, in that tangent, but I am not sure exactly what does a neuroscience coach mean. And again, I have a question after this as well. So, and how has being a neuroscience coach actually, this unique perspective, that has influenced your leadership style? And how do you incorporate the principles that, you have coached yourself with to foster like high performing teams?
Well, thanks for Shruti again. Thanks for the great question and the opportunity to share some of my personal passion. A former colleague of mine, a really great person who I want to credit here. His name is Derek Udale, and look him up on LinkedIn. Really forward thinker. He introduced me to neuroscience coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And what interested me was that, sometimes you're in a situation at work. Let's say it's a tough situation at work, and you could step back and look at it and think there's maybe a logical way to work your way out of that situation, but there are things that you don't do, or there are things that your colleagues don't do, or I've sat in promotional reviews at year end, and people who seem to have great potential don't seem to realize that potential. I was curious about why might that happen? Why do we sometimes not do the thing that seems obvious? Why do we sometimes not realize all of our potential? And the neuroscience coaching was about tapping into more of our amazing brain's potential.
Mm-hmm.
So the research says that we probably tap into about 20 to 30% of our brain's potential every day. And so if we could improve that, we could improve our personal outcomes, our professional outcomes. And the professor that Derek introduced me to basically said, I don't care what might be in your environment. I don't need you. I don't need to do therapy with you. I don't need to understand what might be stressing you right now. But what's basically happening in your brain is when you're struggling to put that solution together, to do the thing that you want to do, realize your potential, it usually means you have an overload of a particular hormone that's not helping you think. And most frequently, those two hormones are adrenaline and cortisol. And the way he described it to me as a layperson is that cortisol is like filling your brain with glue. All of those amazing brain synapses just slow right down when your brain is being pumped through with cortisol, which is one of our standard fight or flight reactions. And so I learned that there are a number of pretty straightforward simple techniques that you can use that just tamp down that adrenaline response, tamp down that cortisol response, and that just helps your brain synapses to function more effectively and keep both your left and your right brain communicating with each other in balance. So how have I thought about that in my professional world? Working with the professor I was introduced to, another guy who's out there on LinkedIn, his name is Dr. Stan Rodsky, and I can pop those names in the chat for everybody later on. You know, things that it helps if you're in a stressful situation and you have a big decision to make. Stan Rodsky's research has shown that if you can tamp down that adrenaline cortisol response over a period of time, the quality of your decisions improves. The other thing is, if you want to learn something new, if you need the energy to actually create new neural pathways, you're learning a new skill, you really need, again, to have a much more balanced hormonal output in your brain. And if you're trying to create new neural pathways, cortisol really kind of stops you doing that. And so if I love to learn new things, and if I think about one of the things I'm actively studying right now is I'm trying to learn as much as I can that's relevant to me about artificial intelligence and machine learning. That requires us to really challenge our neural pathways, right? Really challenge how we think about things. And so I find these small techniques really helpful to keep me open to learning those new things and challenge my past assumptions. But I need to be careful, because I could go on for a long time about neuroscience coaching, but it's really about thinking about your brain is at its best when left and right hand side are communicating with each other, when you've got the most brain synapses hitting their target. And the best way to do that is to make sure that your brain has lots of water, so hydration. Your brain has the right amount of oxygen, so that's where the getting up and moving around, getting yourself outside once a day comes in.
Yeah.
And the right amount of glucose, so that's where trying not to go too long between meals comes in. You equip your brain with that and try and keep those hormones that decrease brain function at bay. That's how you optimize.
And I do neither of those. I feel as as soon as you said we should keep ourselves hydrated, I was like, yeah, I have my water right here. I have a severe throat infection also, so I should just hydrate myself so that So, Paula, does it have to do something like taking care of your own mental health and your own body in order to be more rational? Like, does it help you be more rational and be more objective in your decision making?
I would possibly say not so much rational as I was actually on a call with Stan last night, and what we were talking about was that in our professional and personal lives, we're subjected to more and faster change than ever before. And so it's thinking about what are our resources to respond to that, and also to optimize our own wellness, how we feel. And so for me, it's thinking about, again, if I have that difficult decision, I want a balance of the logical rational. So I want a balance of the left brain side. But I also want to make sure I'm not ignoring the right brain side, which is where sort of our emotional response, our intuition sits. And And each one of us, when we're born, neuroscientists have studied that everybody has an infinitesimal preference for left or right brain. And so when you're in that sort of situation where you feel a little stressed, or maybe you feel a lot stressed, one of the things that happens is your brain goes into energy conservation mode, and it says, right, I'm not going to try and make any new connections, and I'm going to go after the most familiar connections. So for me, that would be, I would go right into my left brain side, and I would be too logical and too rational, and I would stop listening to my intuition and to some of my emotion. And I can actually think of appraisals I've had where I've sat down and talked to my manager and said, you know, I knew something wasn't right. My intuition told me something wasn't right, something wasn't adding up, but I didn't have the logical, rational signals to back it up, and I focused too much on the left brain side. So I don't know if that really answers your question, Shruti, but I think to me it comes back to, as we're moving forward, problem solving, decision making, anything like that, it's having that right balance and not relying on one side too much or the other side too much. Hopefully that helps.
It does. It does. I mean, that was quite interesting, Paula. All the facts that you mentioned, I was unaware about a lot of things. I mean, I know that I've felt like this in certain situations, but I was not quite sure why that's happening and how can I tackle that, you know? I feel, yeah, it would be so much fun working with you, is what I was thinking to myself while you were answering those things, because I can have such lengthy conversations with you, and I can learn so much about, why am I reacting like that, and how can I be more, balanced? How can I be more balanced, and how can I take effective decisions? I feel it would help anybody in decision making for sure, in being practical to some extent, and being, I wouldn't want to say grounded, but just avoid, they would just be not extremes, is what I feel. There would be no extremes as such, as often, which I feel is the case with most of us. With me, at least. I shouldn't be saying for others, but with me, it's the case. So great answer, Paula. Loved it. So, all right. I would like to ask you, Paula, if we reflect back on your journey, what challenges did you face as a woman in leadership roles, and what strategies helped you overcome all those obstacles?
So I think we talked a little bit at the beginning of the session that things have definitely changed for me since I started my career and where I am right now. So I think when I started my career, one of the challenges for me was just not really being able to see anybody else like me in technology and operations and financial services. It wasn't that there weren't women in the team overall, but not necessarily in roles like mine. And so one of the things was, when you can't quite see somebody like yourself, or or somebody who's in the role that you aspire to, I often felt that I was more trying to emulate some of the men around me, and it wasn't really working for me. It wasn't really me. And, when you're not really yourself, people can pick up on that. And, now they would talk about it being, not your authentic self. And again, that's possibly a term that gets overused. But I just knew that I hadn't found my groove, right? Like how to be the leader I wanted to be, the way I wanted to be. And so that's why that nearly all female leadership team in JP Morgan was such a revelation to me, because I could see people in these really senior roles and how they operated. I think the other thing that I felt sort of in the middle, early to the middle of my career, a lot of legislation was changing, and the intent of the legislation was positive. It was to try and open up opportunities for women who maybe had young families, women with caring responsibilities. And those legislations started to really say to managers, you can't ask these questions in interview, right? You can't ask, are they thinking about starting a family, right? You can't ask them about what their child care arrangements are. But I also found that didn't stop people wondering about that. You know, it's almost like you could see it writ on their faces. They're like, oh, if I give this woman who I think might have some young children this really big chance, is she going to be there in a crunch? Like, if we have to stay late at work, you know, is that going to work for me? You know, am I going to invest all this time and then she's going to go off on this lengthy maternity leave and the rest of the team, you know, even though you're not supposed to ask those questions and you're still not. And again, I say that the intent of the legislation is truly positive. It doesn't stop people wondering what that situation is. So the strategy I tried to employ was to say, let me try to take the wondering, let me be comfortable about volunteering what I was willing to volunteer to stop you wondering. So I can think about an interview, you know, sort of again, earlier on in my career, where I really wanted the job and I felt like the person was wondering whether I was going to be there if they needed a late night or an early morning or whatever. And I just said, you know, here's my situation. I know that I said to him, I know that you're not allowed to ask me this, but I want to show to you how seriously I take this role. Here's my situation. Here's the plan, right? Here's how I've organized myself. Here's my backup strategy. And I'm volunteering this to you because I don't want you to wonder. I want you to give me the job, basically, and I don't want you to wonder. And you know, and that can't work for everybody. I don't expect everybody to do that, but I'd say think about, you know, to me, it was about putting myself in the other person's place and saying, how could I make them more confident that I was the right person for that role and I could be relied on. And, you know, Shruti, I know as we've done some preparation for our session, I've certainly seen from some of the Polestar team that I've met that you have all done a fantastic job in building trust. So this to me is all about building trust, that I'll be here, you know, when I say it, I will. You know, when I make a commitment to you for a delivery, for a responsibility, I will be there. And if there's any reason I can't be there, I will let you know at the earliest opportunity so that you can plan around it. And, you know, I've seen a couple of examples again in the Polestar community where you've done some fantastic work there and built some really great trust. And that trust and delivery means that when something does go wrong and life goes wrong, right, on a regular basis, then that's what allows a leader to give you flexibility because the trust is there. So I do get a bit passionate. I don't like it when people come to the conversation and ask for the flexibility first. I feel like maybe it's just that the route I've traveled, but I feel that we earn the flexibility through trust and delivery. And when you've earned it, I feel that flexibility is given generously.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Paula. Thanks. It was great coming from you. I mean, we value trust, and I think it should be valued. It's something that must be valued, and it's very important. And I recall your impactful story, like you about you earning trust from the manager, from your manager at JP Morgan. So if you can share that experience, basically you sort of did, and I just want to know, how has this influenced your career path and your leadership philosophy in general?
So yes, I can picture the person that I had that conversation when I really wanted that role. And actually, the interesting thing, it built such a level of trust between us that a little later on in my career, still at that time in JP Morgan, he ultimately came to work for me. So I worked for him for a while. Then we went our different ways in our career, and we had a really great mutual respect. And a little later on, he came to work for me, and I thought that was fantastic, that he was willing to do that. I think the way it's influenced me is I try to bring that to the teams that I lead. In other words, to work with them in the way that I would wish to be worked with. I don't require anybody to share anything with me that they shouldn't, but I do say to them, just think, I'm willing to give you this chance. Just think about how you're organized for success. And that, again, to me isn't gender specific, right? We all in our working world need to think about how are we organized for success. What's our village that supports us? And that village could be colleagues who have great knowledge and information that we don't have. That village can be people outside of work who, if you're in a crunch, can. I've had other working mothers who said, no, send her home with my daughter, it's all okay. So I think I just try and bring that to my own leadership style.
Yeah, that's great answer, Paula. Love that. I think we have discussed about this incidents, and you mentioning it again, it's really great. I would just like to diverge a little. I'd like to move to a question which regarding AI, basically. So,
Yes.
with AI reshaping industries and everything, what advice do you have for women in tech to seize the opportunities like like whatever this technology offers? Like, how can they update? How can they update themselves? How can they upskill in AI? And what would be that practical advice you would offer? And, apart from that, how can organizations better support them in this journey? Yeah.
So again, great question, and a bit of a passion subject for me. So I'd say the first thing, as any individual, but definitely women in technology, take charge yourself right now. You're the steward of your own career, and you're the best steward of your own career. So I'd say people will help you. Don't please ask for help, but don't expect help. Take charge now. So I've got 3 actions I'd suggest. The first one is find a free version of a Gen AI project. And there's definitely free versions of, ChatGPT-4. There's free versions of Gemini on Google, and play around with it. Maybe use it in your personal life, whatever, but just start to play around with it, that experimenting. Second action is, most organizations I've come across have really great learning libraries. A lot of them are now digital and online, but they often don't get used to their max. So go dig around and see anything you can find out, just to get yourself, get yourself knowledgeable. And as you start to build some knowledge, if you see anything going on around you, colleagues, managers, whatever, and say, is there anything I can get involved in? If not, even if you can't get involved, think about going having a chat with somebody who's working in that space. And then the last action I'd say is I've been a heavy user of Coursera. Now, I don't know how prevalent Coursera is around the globe, but it certainly has very high quality courses, many of which are free, but provided by, absolutely top-notch universities. And, take some of those. There's one I've done with University of Michigan where on average the videos are about 4 minutes long. And so you could do a couple, you could kind of have a little bit of a lunch break and maybe do a couple of those in 15 minutes. But I just think it's really important because AI is all about the data. And the corpus of data that generative AI is operating on is the internet, and the internet is very I'm going to say Western first world focused. So there's definitely underrepresentation in that corpus of data that's being scraped of certain demographics. If you go back historically, definitely underrepresented as far as women are concerned. And also there are, I think, prevalent on the internet, maybe about 20 languages, but around the world there are hundreds of languages. So the more people who can get involved, the better, because as we train that data, if you happen to be from a sector that's underrepresented, you're more likely to pick up on bias, potential bias and hallucination. Whereas if you're in a heavily represented sector, that may not occur to you. So I would just say, get involved, and we'd love to get the more people we can get involved, get involved now. Those would be my offers for actions.
Thanks a lot, Paula. I'm going to go and check everything out. I'm going to take those initiatives myself. That was quite helpful. Great answer, Paula. I really appreciate your openness and depth, of your experience. And now I would just like to shift gears a bit and dive into a rapid fire round.
Yep.
All right. So I'll ask you a series of quick questions, and I love to hear your first thoughts. Basically, if we can keep our responses very brief, and they can be one-word answers and something like that. Okay. So, all right. I'll quickly start with the rapid fire round. My first question would be, one word that encapsulates your leadership style.
Preferred style is definitely coach.
Great answer. The biggest challenge women in tech face today.
Pushing for more representation.
Definitely. Great answer. One word to describe your career journey so far.
A bit unexpected. I took chances I wasn't expecting to. Ended up in places I didn't plan to, but definitely rewarding.
Great. Like as they say, an unexpected journey often leads to the most valuable lessons. So for sure, it's great how you've embraced that, and we have heard that in your answers as well. So great answer, Paula. Okay, so next question would be, the most essential trait for a leader in your view.
Great listener.
One word that defines success for you personally.
Did I have an impact?
Amazing. Yeah. All right. Your favorite way to unwind or relax?
I have lots, but I'd say probably my favorite is reading. I can
Great.
disappear into a book, a fantasy world.
Great. I will be definitely reaching out to you for, some recommendations. I'd love to get your recommendations on some books, and I would love to check them out as well. But great answer, Paula. The first word that pops into your mind when you think of innovation.
Incremental. And just to flesh that out a little bit, I think some of the best innovation is actually where people take things that are there and they improve them or they adapt them. Again, it's not that I don't believe in, big bang innovation, but I think that that's a lot less frequent than we realize. And I'm the champion of incremental innovation. Like if you come in every day and say, "Oh, could I make that a little bit better every day?" That I almost think that's an undervalued area of innovation.
Great, great. I mean, of course, it's often the small, consistent changes that actually lead to significant advancements, right? So great answer, Paula, again. Guys, in case anybody has any questions, feel free to write us in the chat, uh, as I said before, or else you can also mail us at marketing@polestarllp.com. And you can definitely reach out to us and Paula on LinkedIn as well. We'll be sharing the profile links. You must already be having them, but we'll again share that. And the email ID would also be shared in the chat. So uh, we have all seen she's great at answering questions and they're quite interesting. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you must be having some really inquisitive questions. So feel free to, shoot them. All right.
So I just spotted a great one that popped up from Forzan. So a hack, yes. What helps me focus on the solution rather than the problem? I think for me, one of the things that I try to do is with a team is say, all right, our immediate priority, as you say, is the solution, but let's make sure that we've planned some time after we've got to the solution to do a little debrief so we understand how we got there and we can learn from it. And I guess for me, what I try and do is separate them and say, let's do the deep dive into where it went awry after the solution. And one of the things that I find is when you do that, maybe you come back to it like 2 or 3 days later, you've lost some of that emotional surge, that like, because when you first see the problem, it's like, oh, really? Like, how did we do that? How did we get here? And you really feel that emotion going through you. And you do need to experience that emotion, but I try and like sort of separate the deep dive or the post-mortem to when that emotional surge is gone and say, all right, okay, so we are where we are. Let's focus on getting this solved first, and then we can come back. I typically will book the meeting so we know it's there. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it does. It does. We have a lot of questions, other questions as well, Paula. I am constantly checking the clock as well, and I want to ask each and every question to you as well. So, we have a question from Arpita. She says she loved your session, and she mentions like she asks like you mentioned the pushback that you faced. You wanted to do when you wanted to do things your way with a team that was pretty set in theirs. How did you manage that, and any advice on how to handle situations like that? A great question, Arpita.
It is.
Yeah.
I'd say what I try to do is honor where people have come from. So I think most people in professional life have very positive intentions. They don't come to work to do things poorly, right? They don't come to work to deliver something that's not ideal. But sometimes we get into less than ideal circumstances. So what I try to do is say, all right, take me through your journey. Like, let's understand how we got here and sometimes why we got here. And then that helps me to understand where they're coming from a bit more. And then maybe talk about, okay, so could we then imagine something that's a little different from this? And in some senses, I found that the objections maybe go away a little because people just want to be heard. They don't want their previous work to be discounted or not valued. And so I try to honor that even if we're not in an ideal place or I want to change something, there was value to the journey that went before. Let's understand what that value is and how much of that can we keep as we move forward. And I've found that's been a pretty reliable approach.
Yeah, great answer. I think that pretty much covers what she asked. I have another question. This is from Sudha. She again thanks you for the wonderful session, and she would love to she would love to know about who are all the people that inspire you and you look up to, and if you could also highlight what podcasts do you listen to. This is something that I also want to know.
No worries. So I've always believed in threes because in our conscious brain, we can carry three things around. So these are people that both inspire me and it's led me to listen to their podcasts. So I loved the podcast that Barack Obama did with Bruce Springsteen. Just listening to such people with such diverse backgrounds, work in different fields, talking to each other about the same subject. I always felt energized when I'd finished listening to that podcast. And then that led me on to, I really love listening to Michelle Obama's podcast too. And I recently watched, I think it was on Netflix, I recently watched a documentary about her latest book launch. And again, I just love the way that she talks to young women and tries to inspire young women who maybe are coming from really challenging backgrounds. And then the last podcast that I'd share that I really like is one called Fixable. And it's run by Dr. Frances Fry and her wife, Anne Morris, who is a well-renowned executive coach. And they just have such a lovely way of working with people to fix challenging problems. And I had the chance to see Frances Fry twice during my tenure at BMO. She is amazing. Just the way she conveys how we can better lead, how we can better communicate. So those are my three recommendations that come straight to mind.
Oh, great. Anything around neuroscience as well? That is just my personal question. I was thinking if,
and in the neuroscience space, then I'm thinking on the spot here, Shruti, less podcasts, but there's definitely a couple of people out there who are posting on LinkedIn. If you don't mind, I might need to come back to you with the best recommendations there, but there's a couple of people who are posting snippets that are really interesting. One that might be worth looking out for on the web or on LinkedIn is the NPN Hub. Let me type that in. And it's the Neuro Practitioners Network. Their hub is a great one for sort of what's going on in that world.
Great. No, that's fine. I mean, apart from that, I might have a lot more other questions as well, and you'll find messages from me popping up on your LinkedIn page every now and then. And
I am happy to continue sharing.
Apologizing in advance, Paula. Apologizing in advance. I'm a big fan, so would definitely be reaching out. Another question, this is from Karthik. What
Mhm.
aspects of the organizational culture at your previous company, at your previous companies, have you had the most impact on your career?
Couple of things spring to mind. One was, if I think about my tenure at BMO, I think it was probably the most collaborative organization that I'd worked at. And so it was an organization where it was incredibly easy to reach out to anybody in the organization, and they would take your call, and engage with you. And I have to say, I've come across organizational cultures that aren't like that. Like if they don't know who you are, or you aren't at quite the right level in the organization, they might not answer your outreach or call or whatever. So one of the things I really loved about BMO was very collaborative, like pretty much anyone would talk to you. And I thought that was quite amazing. I think the other one that sort of sticks out was just when I think about my tenure at JP Morgan, I never come across a culture, especially in the latter years after Jamie Dimon arrived, where it was almost like everybody was empowered. If you saw an issue and you had relevant knowledge and some level of remit, then you were super supported to go work on that issue, right? And then that to me was like some of the elements of empowerment at its best. It's like if you saw something
Mhm.
and you had the right knowledge, knew some of the right people, you were always supported in solving the problem. And I think I try to bring that to everywhere I went to after that. And again, not every organization feels comfortable with that. So, again, I've done a little bit in preparation for this session, and I appreciate it. And I really see in Polestar, like you're a very collaborative group, right? You seem to really collaborate and engage with each other. And I think, you probably all realize that, but if you don't, I would say, take that away, because that isn't everywhere, and you're very focused on solving problems. So those are two great parts of your culture.
Thanks a
So
lot, Paula. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thanks for the appreciation. It really means a lot, Paula. Thanks. Um, I have one question from Ali that I missed. It was the first question, sorry. Can you share an experience where you had to navigate a crisis in your organization, and what did you learn from it?
oh so yes, and I think when you work in financial services and tech and ops, there are often crises that come up at very short notice. I think what I noticed is when you work with a great set of people, the first thing for me is about getting the right people around the table. And it doesn't matter what their role is, right? Or what their level in the organization is. It's how quickly can you get the right people around the table to help you solve the problem? And again, are they empowered to make the decisions to do so? And when you have that right group of people and they have the right facts, it's amazing what things you can get done. And I think the other thing that I've tried to always think is when a crisis comes up, sometimes you think about, right, some of our regular stuff has to take a back seat. And so I've always tried to work on the basis, how much of the regular stuff do we either have, this like amazing process where it works no matter what, or if we've done that process, how much have we automated so that regular life can carry on, and you can flip to addressing the crisis. So there were a number that came to my mind, but I think perhaps the most resonant or impactful one is being in an organization when the pandemic hit and having to flip from maybe 10,000 people out of 250,000 people having remote access to 250,000 people having remote access. And then, you know, we said, all right, there are some things that right now we don't need to do. So we stopped doing some regular stuff. We don't need to do regular stuff. We need to solve this problem. And again, it was, we got the right people around the table in different parts of the world, and we had the right brains, and we turned that organization to fully remote in a matter of weeks. And if we had run that as a project, right, if we had said, you know, no crisis, right, we're gonna turn everybody to fully remote, that would be a project we probably would have said that's going to take us 2+ years. Yeah. But with the right people, the right focus, and, you know, setting the right things to one side, you know, and so many organizations did that. So sometimes it's thinking about, oh, maybe I don't have to be in a dire crisis, but when could I or should I replicate that mode of operating?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, hopefully these resonate with people. I'm seeing a few messages that indicate that they do. You know,
I think everybody is quite, I mean, they're really appreciative of this session, Paula. And we have a question. Let's just take one last question from Sonali, if that's fine by you. Okay.
Of course.
So, she says many professionals experience imposter syndrome at some point in their careers, feeling like they don't, I'm so sorry, I can't see that properly.
Oh,
they don't truly deserve their achievements. What advice do you have for overcoming these feelings in those moments?
First thing I'd say, Sonali, thanks for asking such a brave question, because it is a brave question. Lots of people do experience this. And I think the very first thing you have to do is actually acknowledge that you're feeling it. Right. And then be a little compassionate to yourself and think about, you know, this organization hired me because they believe in me. Yeah. And, you know, sort of think about, yes, I might look around and see people and think, oh, they've got a better degree than me, or they maybe have a better background than I have, or they've done something that I haven't done. But again, like, somebody saw something in you. And I'd say to try and be compassionate to yourself and trust in that somebody saw something in you, and that something is real. Sometimes it's great to have somebody who doesn't have experience, because in your team, they ask questions that, you know, might seem obvious, but they cause you to properly question the assumptions you're making. And so what I've tried to do is, like, trust that somebody saw something in me, live up to that something. And, you know, when I do feel that way, like, just give yourself, you know, a little bit of compassion and say, you know, yeah, I'm feeling a bit that way today. I think the worst thing is to try and, like, push it under the carpet.
So you mean sometimes it's okay to give a little pat on your backs for your own.
Absolutely. Sometimes, you know, you have one of those days where you just do the best that you can do that day. And tomorrow, one of the things I love about neuroscience and some of the associated things with it, like meditation and mindfulness, one of my other bosses said to me, every day, every new day is an opportunity to start afresh.
Yeah.
You can only live or work that day. So maybe you had not your best day the day before. You did the best you could, but this morning's a new day. You get to start fresh.
Of course. Of course. Great. Great. So amazing. Thanks a lot for that, Paula. So, I think we'll take up other questions if we have any. We can directly message them to your email, or we can text you over LinkedIn and we can take it up from there. But, Paula, as we wrap up this session, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude, and I really want to say thanks to you. Your insightful responses and openness have truly enriched our discussion, for sure. And it's been a fantastic journey, with you exploring the challenges and triumphs you have faced and everything around that. And it's a fangirl moment for me. I've connected with you earlier as well, and I was so excited on having this discussion with you today, because your perspectives on empowering women in tech and the significance basically of effective leadership, it's incredibly inspiring. So again, thank you for sharing your experiences with us today, Paula. I really appreciate you taking time out for this, and I'm glad I was
Oh,
able to speak with you in this session. Thanks a lot.
oh, Shruti, thank you. And thank you to everybody who joined. I really, really appreciate it. It was an honor for me to come and join you all and share some of my journey. And I just hope that there may be some nuggets in there that have helped you along the way. And as Sonali has said, please don't be strangers. Reach out on LinkedIn. Reach out via email. Shruti and Sonali will keep us in touch, and I wish you all the very best in your personal and professional journeys.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Paula. Have a great day. Thank you.